king. Vaughn didn't rap about the streets, he testified from inside them. Born in O Block, where 45% of residents lived below the poverty line and barely half-finished high school, Dayvon Bennett lived every bar before he ever wrote one. That authenticity turned Crazy Story into 4 million first-week streams. But at 26, the life that made his stories undeniable would claim the storyteller himself. Dayvon Bennett's earliest memories unfolded in Parkway Gardens, a cluster of brick towers on Chicago's South Side known as O Block. By the time he was born in 1994, the promise of middle-class living that once filled these halls had faded. Nearly half the households lived below the poverty line, surviving on a median income of just $22,000 a year, less than half the city's average. In cramped apartments, families stretched every dollar, and children grew up knowing that broken elevators and leaking pipes were as ordinary as the police sirens echoing through the night. Inside O Block, the weight of poverty pressed down on every aspect of life. Unemployment hovered near 18%, and the city's efforts to revamp public housing left many units overcrowded and neglected. These conditions bred a sense of isolation where the outside world felt distant and opportunity even further away. For young Dayvon, the playground doubled as a proving ground, and the stairwells became corridors of both danger and escape. School offered little refuge. At James McCosh Elementary and the local high school, resources were thin and teacher turnover was high. Only about 55% of students in his area would graduate, compared to over 75% citywide. Many kids slipped through the cracks, not because they lacked ambition, but because the odds were stacked against them. After-school programs were scarce, and the pull of the street was strong. In this world, survival meant learning the rules early, watching who you trusted, and carrying the lessons of the block long before you ever picked up a pen. For Dayvon, every day in O Block was another chapter in a story that would one day be told in his own words. Gunfire was never far from Dayvon Bennett's world. At just 17, he stood near the chaos of a 2011 schoolyard shooting, a drive-by that left more than just scars on the block. Police reports from that year trace a pattern: retaliation, silence, and a lesson learned early. Survival demanded quick thinking and a cold resolve. By 2014, Dayvon's name appeared in court dockets linked to an attempted murder charge outside a Southside bar. The evidence didn't stick. Witnesses withdrew and the case was dismissed. But the ink of his arrest record told a different story, one the streets never let him forget. The cycle didn't end there. In December 2018, he was sentenced to 15 years at Stateville Correctional Center after a conviction tied to a 2014 killing. The Illinois Department of Corrections daily logs listed him in General Population Unit B, where days blurred into each other under the fluorescent lights. It was in those concrete corridors that something shifted. With access to the IDOC's education program, Dayvon picked up a pen and a notebook. The cell block became his studio. He wrote verses on scraps of paper, borrowing details from police reports and court transcripts, turning case numbers and street corners into stories. Lil Durk, already a rising figure in Chicago rap, visited the facility as part of a youth mentorship program. He handed Dayvon a notebook and told him, "Write it how you lived it." That simple challenge unlocked a new survival strategy. Dayvon's lyrics didn't just sound real, they were real. Each line was pulled from testimony, from the cold logic of the block and the courtroom. The risk that once defined his life became the fuel for his art. In prison, Dayvon Bennett started to transform. His past no longer just a burden, but the source of a voice that was about to shake the world. The day the contract was signed, Dayvon Bennett became King Von in the eyes of the industry. September 2019 brought a formal deal with Only the Family, Lil Durk's label, and a distribution pact with Empire. The paperwork spelled out a 2-album commitment and a 15% royalty split, but for Von it meant something bigger, a way out of the cycle that had defined O Block and a stage to turn survival into testimony. In the studio, Von and Durk worked side by side, laying down tracks that blurred the line between confession and performance. Loud Lab's logs show 4 marathon sessions between May 2018 and March 2019. The engineers noted his focus, the way he built each verse from memory, court records, and street details. The first single, Crazy Story, dropped in November 2018 and spread fast. 20 million Spotify streams in its first year, 4 million in the first week alone. By June 2020, it peaked at number 4 on the Billboard Hot Rap Songs chart and climbed to 68 on the Hot 100, a rare feat for a drill newcomer. Critics called the song cinematic. Fans said it sounded like a real-life movie, every bar stitched together from the same streets that shaped him. The track's structure, setup, conflict, resolution mirrored the stories he lived. Von rapped about robberies, shootouts, betrayals, but never as myth. The numbers told their own story. 35 million YouTube views by summer, 5 million monthly Spotify listeners by year's end. With each stream, the world pressed closer to O-Block, listening to a young man who had turned his past into a future few thought possible. Lil Durk's mentorship opened the door, but it was Von's raw storytelling that made people believe every word. Streaming numbers for King Von didn't just climb, they exploded. In the week after his death, Spotify reported a 275% surge in plays. By the end of the following year, his catalog had crossed 2.5 billion streams worldwide. Tracks like Took Her to the O and Crazy Story didn't just rack up numbers in Chicago or Atlanta. They charted on Billboard, with Took Her to the O breaking into the Hot 100 and holding its own against mainstream pop and rap heavyweights. The drill sound that once echoed through O-Block's courtyards now pulsed from headphones in London, Lagos, and Sydney. Social media hashtags trended across continents, and fans from as far as Eastern Europe posted their own translations of Von's lyrics, trying to capture the urgency of his stories. XXL and Billboard ran features dissecting his rise, calling him the narrative engine of a new generation of drill, someone whose verses felt less like entertainment and more like dispatches from a city under pressure. For peers like G Herbo and Lil Keed, Von's approach wasn't just influential, it was a challenge. They spoke in interviews about the way he turned street reports into cinema, pushing drill beyond party anthems into something more raw and immediate. Critics noted that, unlike many artists who built personas around borrowed tales, Von's music carried the weight of lived experience. The world wanted to hear what survival sounded like. And for a brief moment, King Von's voice was everywhere, unfiltered, urgent, and impossible to ignore. At 10:02 p.m. on November 6, 2020, King Von stepped into the Atlanta night outside Hood-Rich Southern nightclub, 2 friends at his side. The air was heavy with old tensions. A white SUV pulled up, drawing wary looks. Inside, the mood sharpened. At 10:07, surveillance caught Von heading toward the bar. Words passed, quiet edged with history. By 10:12, a 911 call reported shots fired. 2 minutes later, gunfire erupted. The first shot cut through the crowd, then a burst from an automatic weapon. Von and a bystander fell. Security tried to stem the panic as the shooter disappeared into the night. EMTs arrived at 10:18, but King Von was already gone. The police report, ATL 2021-125, confirmed a Glock 19 as the weapon, matching casings at the scene to the gun found in the SUV. Forensics left little doubt. This was no random act, but the end of a long feud. In the aftermath, the debate over Von's legacy intensified. Empire's filings showed $4.2 million in posthumous royalties flowing to his estate, managed by only the family and Lil Durk's legal team. Tribute tracks and unreleased verses surfaced, but the question lingered. Was Von's legacy a testament to raw authenticity, or had his life and death become just another commodity? A New York Times op-ed captured the split. Earl Miller, a Chicago community elder, said, "He told stories the world needed to hear, but the world wanted the story more than the man." Von's lyrics weren't just entertainment, they were testimony from the same streets that claimed him. The Atlanta night closed his story, but the questions remain. Can a legacy built on survival ever outrun the cycle that shaped it? In an era when rap often blurs fact and fiction, King Von's stories cut sharp because they came from lived truth. That collision of raw experience and fame still shapes the genre and its dangers. Authenticity in music has power, but sometimes it demands the highest price.